Hi, everybody, and welcome to our GIS webinar focused on how to get the most out of your ArcGIS Online implementation. My name is Anthony Dowell. I am with the Mid-Atlantic Center for Emergency Management and Public Safety at Frederick Community College, and I support the MSDE Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness Career Technology and Education program as a GIS curriculum developer. Specifically, I've been involved with the Information Communications and Technology pathway, under which we've got two GIS-focused courses. One is Introduction to Geographic Information Systems, and the second is Advanced Geographic Information Systems and Remote Sensing. And so to that end, today we're going to be talking a bit about ArcGIS Online, and specifically how you as an instructor who either teaches a GIS course or maybe is interested in how to utilize GIS technology in the classroom, how you can access ArcGIS Online, and how you can make the most out of the tools that are included with the ArcGIS Online platform, all the capabilities and resources that are included in the platform. And so while this topic will be of particular interest to those of you who are GIS instructors and who are maybe teaching one or both of those GIS courses, this is also an excellent resource for those of you who are trying to learn more about GIS technology, who want to use GIS technology in your classroom, or who want to use GIS as a collaborative tool that you can use across your program or across your department. So just a brief agenda for today's session. We'll start out with an overview of Esri's ArcGIS Online solution, give some introduction on some of the capabilities that are included, and again, how you can leverage this within your classroom environment. We'll talk about the Esri ArcGIS for Schools bundle, which is a mechanism through which you're able to access this software and get it implemented within your environment. We'll talk about some demonstrations and some tutorials, some things that you can utilize in terms of map making, management of users and content, and we'll just give a good overview of some of the core functionality of ArcGIS Online using the MACEM&PS ArcGIS Online environment. We'll talk about some tips and some best practices and things that might be beneficial for you as you're getting up and running with ArcGIS Online in your classroom. And finally, some additional resources, including some recommended training for instructors that are starting to get up and running with the platform. So starting off, we'll just briefly talk about what ArcGIS Online is. ArcGIS Online is a solution through Esri, which is one of the premier GIS software vendors in the industry. And it's a cloud-based mapping and analysis solution. And it's a platform that can be used to make maps, to analyze data, as well as a platform that can be used to collaborate and provide users with access to content across your organization. One of the main benefits of ArcGIS Online as a solution is that it only requires internet access and a user account to be able to access it, which means no software installation is required, and it means it's a great option for students who maybe don't have access to a computer that's suitable for installing desktop GIS software at home, or for schools that maybe are not set up with a lab that can support desktop GIS installation. Within ArcGIS Online, data is securely stored and managed, and it does give the ability to assign permissions to individuals or groups of individuals, so you're able to share and manage content effectively. So again, this data is stored securely. It's on private infrastructure hosted by Amazon Web Services, and it can be configured to meet mapping and IT requirements, as we're going to discuss later. Additionally, ArcGIS Online is a really great gateway to more advanced GIS tools and processes. So students who get started with ArcGIS Online will get introduced to key terminology, key functionality of web-based GIS apps, and that can be a great stepping stone as students and instructors want to move into more advanced software, things like ArcGIS for desktop, ArcGIS Pro, if we're talking about the Esri ecosystem, and other GIS-based solutions as well. So in terms of what you can do with ArcGIS Online, there's quite a bit of functionality that's included in the platform. The core functionality includes the ability to create maps, to create web mapping applications, scenes, which are 3D visualizations of GIS data, as well as other ways to interact with data, again, both within the 2D and the 3D environment. The nice thing about ArcGIS Online, as I mentioned, is that it's entirely in the web environment. So you have the ability to share your maps with anyone, anywhere within your organization, or you can keep them entirely private to themselves. So if you have a student that's working on a project, they are able to work on their project within their group, and then they can share that out when it's ready to be shared with an instructor, with an entire class, or otherwise. Gives the ability to work collaboratively with colleagues to help build these maps, scenes, and apps. It also includes great analytic tools. So this gives you the ability to better understand your data. And through the map viewer, you have the ability to run data analytics within your browser. You also have access to templates and widgets that can be used to create more complex web applications that can be published and made accessible to users. Additionally, there are ArcGIS notebooks, which provide access to Python programming resources to perform analysis, automate workflows, and help to visualize data. ArcGIS Online also can support field activities. So you can take advantage of some of the built-in tools and applications that can be used to collect data, to navigate, coordinate, and monitor projects. You can create exercises where your students can create maps that can go offline and can support field data collection on mobile devices using tools like Collector for ArcGIS, Survey 123, or Esri's field maps. And you can also access your organization from ArcGIS Companion, which is a mobile app that allows you to explore content and groups on the go. So how is ArcGIS Online managed? As an organization's ArcGIS Online administrator, which is potentially a role that you could find yourself in as a GIS instructor or an administrator, you have the ability to set up, customize, and manage your ArcGIS Online site. The administrator can create groups, which can be organized to be specific to a class or a specific type of content. And within that group, content can be shared with a group, an organization, or it can be private, and can also be made public if that was something that was of interest. Accounts are assigned to individual users, so students can be assigned accounts as well as other instructors across the organization, and you can allow specific roles and permissions to be available for users, as well as access to individual groups. So I'm going to just go through a couple of key ArcGIS Online concepts and go through some of the terminology. So one of these is related to user types and roles. So every user that you have in your ArcGIS Online organization will be assigned a user type and a user role. So for example, the administrator role, again, which you might find yourself in, has the ability to do everything across the organization, to administer the entire organization, to search and use public items, to create and share various types of content, to publish feature services, and to manage users and their privileges. The publisher role has the ability to, again, search and use public items, as well as to create and share items. However, they do not have the ability to provide any of the administrative tasks or functions that the administrator can. And the user role is the lowest level of access. So they can create and share items and search, but they can't create feature services or tiled services, which is important, which we'll discuss here momentarily. There are also various user types that help to assign privileges. And members can also be assigned custom roles within the organization, so you can kind of fine tune and tweak these and create roles that better fit your organization. Default administrators and those that have appropriate privileges can configure custom roles to add control and to also add flexibility within the organization. And members are automatically assigned user types when they're added to your organization, as I'll show when we go through our demonstration today. So the next key concept is the ArcGIS Online homepage. So this is going to be the main landing page that is set up for your organization, and it's going to be the gateway into your ArcGIS Online platform. Every organization that is set up has a homepage, and it can be customized by the organization's administrator to let it be tailored to your school. It can be customized to highlight specific groups that you have within your organization, specific types of content. And so you have the ability to customize your homepage banner and background. You can use your own images. You can have it reference your program name or logo. You can also, again, highlight specific types of content within a gallery ribbon. You can also here manage your default maps and base maps, custom templates, and security settings. All of that is accessed here through the main homepage of ArcGIS Online. And zooming in a bit, you can see across this main banner, you have access to the main ArcGIS Online tabs, which include the homepage, the gallery, the map, which is where you would go to create a new map, a scene, which would be used to create a new web scene. Again, the 3D visualization of data that can be used in that environment. A notebook, which is a programming platform. Here you can also access groups, content, and your organization. So the organization tab is only going to be made available for the administrator, and that's where you'll go to administer your organization. That's where you'll go and set up security settings for your organization. That's where you can manage the various users that have access and so forth. So that won't be made available to a typical user, but other users that log in will see everything else that you just saw here. They'll see the same banner and all the buttons up front with the exception of the organization button. So going across the top of the homepage here, I'll move on to the gallery. And so this is a place where you can showcase certain apps, maps, and other items. So this can, again, be customized by the organization's administrator. You can use this to showcase specific types of items. So if you wanted to highlight specific mapping applications that have been developed from your classes, this is a great place to do that. It can also be used to highlight specific groups. And as you can see on the left side, you can easily filter what's made available in this gallery by the type of content, whether it's a map, a specific data layer, an application, pre-developed tools, or otherwise. So you've got some filtering ability there. So when you come into the gallery page, you can navigate, and that's especially important for those organizations that start to accumulate lots of content. It helps to be able to navigate that more effectively, and it helps users to be able to find things that they're looking for. Next up are scenes. So as noted, scenes allow for the display of an interaction with 3D GIS data of various types. So this can be developed as a local scene, which would be suitable for something like a campus building visualization, or it can be expanded to show a global scene, and you can use it for 3D visualization of things like population or demographics or otherwise. I'll provide a quick demo of this when we jump over to the live portion of the session, but data does need to be 3D enabled or have the appropriate attribution to be able to be used in this environment. But it can be a really great way to visualize data and provide a way to interact with that. Next up are notebooks, and this is probably going to be used more for more advanced users. This is really going to be focused on data science and GIS programming, and those who are interested in those types of activities. But it does allow for code to be developed and shared entirely within the ArcGIS Online environment, which means users can code entirely within the web browser. The code can be shared and stored internally within ArcGIS Online, so you don't have to have any other types of software installed on the user's machine to be able to provide access to this. So if you have students that are really interested in coding and in GIS programming and data science, this can be a great way for them to get familiarized with the general syntax, how code is managed. It can be a great entryway into that discipline. Next up is the Groups tab. So groups are collections of items that are related or that are specific to certain members. So you could set up a group for an individual class. You could set up a group for a collection of students that are collaboratively working on a project. And this gives them the ability to be able to share their specific content to a group of users. And group owners at that point can control the access, the visibility, whether or not that group can be open and anybody can join it, if they, whether or not others can see the group, and also can set up the configuration of the group's homepage. Next up is the Content tab, and this is a really important one because this is where a user is going to go to access all of their ArcGIS Online specific information. And content can refer to pretty much anything within ArcGIS Online, so that can include a specific data layer, it can include a map, an application, it can include other types of files such as spreadsheets, CSV files, Excel files, images, and otherwise. So there are lots of different types of data items that can be uploaded to ArcGIS Online, and that can all be accessed through that content page. So here, users can access content that they've created or that they own. And you can see here that at that point, you can drill into individual data items and you can see the details of what those items are, the type of item that it is. You can add metadata, you can add descriptive information about each of those items, which is important if you want to make that easily accessible to others across your organization. Here you can also export data out into various formats where it could be used for other purposes. You can publish information up to feature services, and you can also update your sharing preferences here. So you can make data shared with other groups, with your organization, or publicly if needed. And then finally, the Organization tab. As I mentioned, the Organization tab is only going to be available to folks with administrative privileges. And the Organization tab is going to give you that subscription level information. It's going to provide information on the members you have within the organization, the licenses that you have through your ArcGIS Online implementation, what credits have been used, which is a concept that we'll cover a little bit later today, and otherwise. So from the overview tab within the organization window here, you can review information about the organization, such as upcoming maintenance requirements. There's a status tab where you can monitor activity across your organization and you can get reports on the usage, which is good, especially as your organization starts to grow a bit and more users are added to your AGOL implementation. And then under settings, you can also configure the various settings for maps and scenes, and you can control, what users see by default when they log in. You can maintain roles and privileges here, and also security and privacy settings. One of the other key concepts is related to credits, and credits are a form of currency that are used within the ArcGIS Online environment and through other Esri platforms as well. And Esri uses credits for things like data storage, data processing, performing data analytics with some of the built-in tools and other operations as well. As part of the ArcGIS for Schools bundle, you get access to a certain number of credits. It's a very substantial number, and they do also provide the ability to request additional credits to be made available as needed. Credits, again, they're utilized for data storage. They're utilized for processing and analytics. Credits can be monitored and managed by the administrator through some of the tools that are available in ArcGIS Online. There are also some budgeting tools that can be made available to help allocate credits. So you can allocate specific numbers to individuals based on a standard user or role type. And which is important because you want to make sure that you understand how many credits individuals are using, so that you don't have people eating up lots of credits on things that maybe are unnecessary. And that can be monitored through the ArcGIS Online status page, which is available under the Administrator tab at the homepage. So the next thing I wanted to cover is how you get access to this platform. Through Esri's ArcGIS for Schools bundle, you can get access to all of this for free. The ArcGIS for Schools bundle is available at no cost for instructional use to individual K through 12 schools in the United States or school districts directly from Esri, again, who is a software vendor. And so if you don't have one set up for your school, generally speaking, one bundle is going to be provided on a school by school basis. So you probably don't need to request separate bundles for individual programs or departments that are underneath of school. If you already have one, it's usually best to piggyback on that rather than trying to request multiple bundles for one school. It provides access to ArcGIS Online, the mobile and web applications, and most of the other services that we've covered today. And access can be made through a request form that's available on Esri's education site. If you don't have an ArcGIS Online account, which is going to be required to get up and running, you can also join the Learn ArcGIS organization through Esri's site for a free 60-day membership, which would give you the ability to play around with this a bit, check out some of the functionality, and it's a great way to explore. Your content's going to be removed after that 60-day period, at which point it would be better to go ahead and request the full bundle and get the ArcGIS Online implementation up and running on your side. Within that trial, you act as the administrator as well, so it can be a good way to get familiar before you go and work through the implementation for your entire school. Within the ArcGIS for Schools bundle, there are 2 tiers of licensing. There is a small schools tier, which is going to be suitable for the vast majority of schools, and that provides access for up to 2,000 total users. Again, those users are going to include administrators, they're going to include instructors that want to be able to access and create groups for their students, as well as the individual students themselves. And so this can be requested by educators or administrators. So if this is something that you don't have set up for your school, you can probably make that request as a GIS educator. There's also a large schools tier, which is designed for 2,000 or more users. Usually this is going to be reserved for larger schools or for school districts that want to implement on a district level, which is not necessarily all that common, but could be implemented if needed. For the large schools tier, generally it's recommended that an instructional lead or IT personnel handle that outreach, just because it can be a little more involved to administer and to do the coordination with all the schools that are underneath of that umbrella. So some of the components that are made available as part of the Esri ArcGIS for Schools bundle include ArcGIS Online. So that's going to provide you with the organizational access and all of those user accounts, as I mentioned, up to 2,000. For the small schools tier, you get access to be able to create web applications. So that includes web maps, web applications, dashboards, story maps, which are a way to be able to use mapping and GIS data to tell a story and kind of almost like a GIS-based PowerPoint. You also got Web App Builder, which allows for the development of custom applications. You've got mobile applications like field maps, Survey 123, and others that can be run on tablets and mobile devices to help support field and mobile data collection. And you get analytic capabilities, the access to pre-existing analytic data services, and data access to a wealth of information that's already available within the ArcGIS Online platform. So with that, I'm going to switch over to a live demonstration and show a couple of tutorials as well. We'll go through some things like getting your organization set up, user creation and management, group creation and management, and then we'll just go through a couple of quick exercises in terms of creating content in ArcGIS Online, how to get started with getting your content published, how to create a web map, how to create a scene, and again, just get you a flavor of what ArcGIS Online actually looks like. So I'm going to switch over to ArcGIS Online now. Okay. So here again, you have the ArcGIS Online homepage, and this is our Esri ArcGIS Online homepage for the Mid-Atlantic Center for Emergency Management and Public Safety at FCC. So we've made some tweaks, as you can see, to our homepage to make it our own. You can see we have our logo here. We've got a custom base map. And so once you get your ArcGIS Online platform set up with Esri, the administrator can go in and they can make changes to the homepage, banner and background. You can provide featured content in a gallery view on your homepage if you desire. So again, you have quite a bit of flexibility to customize this and to tailor it to your school or to your organization. Across the top here, again, you can kind of see some of the main tabs that we have access to within ArcGIS Online. So our homepage, which we're on now, a gallery, the map to go ahead and create an initial web map within ArcGIS Online, scene, which is going to create that 3D web scene, notebooks, groups, content, and organization. Again, the organization tab is only going to be made available if you log in as an administrator. So a typical user, a student, would not see this because that organization tab is going to give you access to all the things that you need to do to administer your organization. So it's going to give you the location where you'll review information about your organization, your Esri subscription details, your credit status, maintenance requirements. That's also where an administrator would go if they wanted to add or invite members to an organization, to manage the member accounts, to assign add-on licenses, or to manage the organization's content, as well as to monitor activity and credits through your organization. So going into the gallery, I'll start there. So again, a gallery is kind of like a landing page where users can go in and explore content that is shared within the organization as a whole. So you can see here, we have a general gallery. Once in the gallery, a user can go in and they can filter out by item type. So for a student logging into the gallery, they should be able to view everything that they have access to within the ArcGIS Online organization. So this would be a great place for them to explore information that's been published by others within the organization, within their class, things that their instructor may have published for them. You can search the gallery using keywords. You can go here under item type and you can filter by the type of item. So again, as you start to accumulate more and more content within your organization, as more data layers are posted, more applications are developed, this is really powerful for users to be able to navigate and find specific things that they're interested in. There are other filters, so they can filter by location, they can search by modification date, tags, and otherwise. You can also change the view up here. So if you'd rather see this in a list view as opposed to a grid, you can see it in that way. And you've also got the ability to sort by relevance, which will automatically make items that are most relevant to a specific user come to the top of your list. Next thing we'll go through is just a map. And so this is where a user would go to create their first ArcGIS Online web map, which is one of the core functionalities of ArcGIS Online. So this is an initial untitled web map. It's basically going to open up a blank map slate that a user can use to start adding information to and configuring their first web map. When you create a brand new blank web map, it's going to be titled Untitled Map here up top. And as you start to add information to the map, as you start to customize and make it your own, then the user can save that map and you can save it to your individual content. So all of the information that you've added to your map, all of the labels, all of the pop-ups and things that you add here, that'll be saved with it. So you can always go back to that map and you can revisit it as needed. So every map is going to include the standard list here. So add, which gives you the ability to be able to add information to your map. So you can either browse existing layers that exist within ArcGIS Online. So if I go to that, I'll have access to everything that I already have within my organization. You can see here, there are some examples of what's already available. You can also use the Living Atlas, which is Esri's platform, to be able to pull lots of great information that's made available by Esri and by others. So here you can see we have access to terrain data sets and slope maps and any number of items that are made available through Esri and through other partners that share data within ArcGIS Online. So this can be a great way for users to get in and explore all of the great GIS data that's available out there through various entities, through various agencies and organizations, as well as through Esri themselves. Here you can also go in and you can filter. So going in and filtering, you can look at different types of data sets. So you can look at base maps, aerial imagery, boundaries, and others. You can sort and filter by region. So if we were to go, for example, into our boundaries, you can search for administrative boundaries, and this will apply that filter so that when I go back in, now I'm seeing boundary data. So I have National Park Service lands. I can add that to my map here, and access to thousands of data sets that cover disciplines, various disciplines, and areas across the world. So when I add a layer to my data set, that'll be made available under my next button down, which is my Layers tab. When I click on a layer that's added here, you see the eye, and that's going to make the layer either visible or not visible within the map itself. And when I have that layer highlighted, you can see on the right side, it's going to make a Properties tab available. And that's where I go to look at the specific properties of that layer. That's going to include the symbology in terms of how that data is represented. So in this case, you can see that I've got a general symbology applied to this map. You can also change the appearance in terms of the transparency of that layer. So it gives you a lot of functionality in terms of how that layer displays, as well as when that layer displays. And that's where you get into this visible range here. So I can make the layer available at all scales, or I can make it only show up at certain scales. And for data sets that are very detailed, you might not want to show them when you're zoomed out to a certain extent, but you may want them to show up in your map when you get in a little tighter. You can also change the style of your layer based on unique values, which might be applicable if you have a data set that has various classifications or types. So if you had a buildings layer, you may want to stylize your buildings based on an attribute. So commercial buildings, you might want to show with one color, residential buildings with another. That's where you can apply that type of a filter based on unique values. You would do that under style. There are also some processing templates and things that you can use to perform analytics on your data. You can change the display order here, and you can also filter your data. So if you were looking to filter a data set and only show things that met a certain set of criteria, certain types of thresholds, you can apply various types of filters to your data sets here using standard expressions. And you can see here that I have a list of all my fields, and I could filter by a name. In this case, I could filter by grouping. Got a lot of flexibility in terms of what you display and how you display it. Going down the list here, you can also view tables within your map. So you can add tables, which could be a CSV file or an Excel spreadsheet, and you can make that visible in your map. You can also, at this point, if you have XY data or coordinates within your table, you can turn a table into a GIS data set that you can map spatially within ArcGIS Online. The next button down is our base maps list. There are a number of existing base maps that Esri makes available. The one that we're showing on screen now is the topographic base map, but you also have access here to an aerial imagery base map, which is a worldwide aerial imagery data set. There's a hybrid imagery layer here that includes the same base imagery with administrative labels superimposed. And as you zoom in, you've got some scale dependent information on transportation networks, on places of interest, and otherwise. So the more that you zoom in on that, the more detail that you see. There's also a standard streets data set that's more planimetric based. You've got the topographic, which we saw a moment ago, and a whole host of others that are made available through Esri or through other GIS services. So again, these are pre-developed base maps that are a great foundation for web maps. You also can develop your own base maps based on imagery that you collect, based on mapping that you do yourself, and that can be done within ArcGIS Online as well. You can add charts to your web map here if you want to visualize your data in a non-mapping way and add that to your map to help tell a story. Your legend is available below that. So the legend is going to look similar to what you see in your table of contents, except for the fact that this is only to visualize what layers. It's going to show the symbology and the list of layers, but you can't make any modifications here. Whereas if you go back up to your layers list, that's how you go in and get access to actually modify the layers that you have, and you can reorder them, again, change their visibility, tweak how they look, and so forth. Next thing down the list are bookmarks, and bookmarks are what you use to get back to places that you want to flag for later. So you have commonly visited places that you want to flag on your map that you want users to be able to get back to. You can do that with a bookmark. So if I were to go here and I said I want to bookmark this exact extent, Chadwick Manor, I can add a bookmark. I can say Chadwick, I can add that bookmark, and then wherever I go in my map, if I zoom around to a new location and I want to get back to that point, I can just click on my bookmark and it's going to take me right back there. Bookmarks are going to be saved within a map, which is nice because if a user creates a map and they save bookmarks, if this is shared with another person, that user is going to have access to that same set of bookmarks. So it's a nice piece of functionality. Next thing down is save and open. And so again, as I mentioned, when you create a new web map, it's going to show up as untitled, as you see above. But as you start to add information and start to customize that map for whatever project or assignment a student is working on, they're going to want to go ahead here and save that. When I go to save, you'll see that there's a prompt here to save the map. You can add a title here. You can add tags. Tags are going to be used to allow users to search for different types of content. So tags can be associated with a map, an application, or also a data item itself. And you can add a brief summary here, and also you can save it in a folder. These folders are going to be specific to users. So users can configure their own sets of folders to help them organize their own content, but it should be noted that this is different than sharing permissions and what groups that the actual item is shared with. And finally, you've got access to some general map properties here. So you can change background, whether there's a standard background color, the map view, time stamping, and otherwise. And then you can also print. So if you wanted to print hard copies of a map that you have developed in ArcGIS Online, you can do that here. We talked through some of these items that are shown on the right-hand side. You can see that these are all grayed out now, and that is because I don't have a layer selected. These are all layer-specific tools. So in order for them to be enabled, I have to have a layer highlighted. So you can see if I go back to my layers here on the left side and I highlight this USA National Park Service lands layer, those then become available. And then I can go in here and I can access the properties of my layer. I can access styles. I can access the processing templates and so forth, those things that I showed you earlier. Underneath of that, we've got some standard tools that are always going to be accessible, whether I have a layer highlighted or not. And those include search. Here you can search it by an address or a place. You can even use a current location if you have that enabled with your computer or your device. You can perform measurements on your map by clicking on a location and then clicking on another location, and you can change that to feet, miles, or any other units of measurement. You can also measure areas, and you can do 3D measurements when you're in the 3D environment. You can run directions. So if you're looking to do some routing, you can do that here. Again, you can utilize location services to use your current location and have your map update to that as needed. And then you've got some general navigation tools here. You can go to your default map view, which is set when you create your map. You can zoom in and out here. So again, just some standard map functionality there. You'll also see a note here that there's a map viewer classic. What you're seeing here is the more recently developed map viewer from Esri. There is a classic view, which those of you who maybe worked with ArcGIS Online a bit in the past are more familiar with. So you do have the ability to work in Map Viewer Classic if you're more comfortable in that. But the more recent viewer is going to be a little better if you can go that route. But you can see here that this is maybe something that you may have been exposed to previously if you've been working with ArcGIS Online in some capacity. Again, it has access to all the same functionality that's just packaged up in a slightly different way. And here from this dropdown, you can always go back to those key tabs that you have within your ArcGIS Online homepage. So if you want to go back to home or your gallery, you can do that here. If I do go back to home, again, it's going to take me back to my main homepage, and I'm back to where we started. Next, I'll go into scene, just to show quickly what a scene might look like and how you might set that up. And so again, a scene is going to be set up as a 3D visualization of data that has 3D information associated with it, or that you would want to use to create some type of a visualization. So here, you can create a new scene. You also have access to some really nice existing scenes that others have developed, which might be a great way for users to get some ideas on some potential projects or ways that they could maybe use their data to develop their own scenes. If I do go and I create a new scene, this is going to look kind of similar to what you saw in the map in terms of the way it's laid out. The layers on the left side here, which is where we're going to add information to our map, as well as the core functionality to navigate. On the right-hand side, you will see that, for example, base maps actually shows up on the right-hand side here. You can overlay that same information that you could on a map as a base map here. So again, it looks very similar to what you see. And if I were to add a layer, for example, and I added my building elevation layer that I have for the SCC campus to my map here, you can click on that item. You can see this is an item that I have saved in ArcGIS Online. You can see some brief information, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add this to my scene. So here you can see I have point elevations for my 3D scene. I'm also going to add my my building footprints data. Now you can see that I have building footprints mapped for all of campus as well. And again, I can go here. I can change to my aerial imagery background if I would like. And so again, I have an initial 2D visualization, again, knowing that this is a 3D scene. So if you have information that you want to use to show your data in 3D, this is where you would do it. So if, for example, I have information for each of my buildings on the height of the building. And so I can take that information and I can use it to extrude these 2D features based on that elevation value, and then I can show it in a 3D environment. So you can see here, you've got 2D polygons that you can use to create your visualization. I've got 3D extrusion, so I'm going to select that here. And I'm going to use this to set up my height. And you can go to relative to the ground. You can set up standards here. Alan, we'll restart from this point. We'll take that last 30 seconds out. So here I can grab a main attribute to visualize. I can go down here and I can see that I have an elevation assigned with each of these footprints, and I'm going to use that to visualize. And you can see here now that I've got an elevation assigned. I'm going to use that elevation for extrusion. And I'm going to change this to relative to the ground level. change this to feet to be consistent with my units relative to the ground level. And you can see I can also change my symbology here. And here, when I zoom in, now I'll see that not only do I have my building footprints, but I have those visualized in 3D. So I can create 3D visualizations of my data, which can be a really interesting way to visualize different types of data sets. Going back to my home page here, I'm not going to save this one. I won't go into notebooks just because that's again more focused on data science and programming, but it is a great way to be able to access code and for users to learn how to code in a web-based environment rather than having to have access to any type of compiling software. If I go into my groups, that's where I'm going to be able to manage the groups that I have. So you can see here that I've got access to 2 groups in my current organization here. I can go and I can create a brand new group, and I could add a name for my group, a summary of that, and specific tags. So much like I can do with specific types of data sets and items, I can add tags to my groups to help people find that if this is a group that I want to be made available to all people in the organization or beyond. And here you can modify that group's permissions and privileges, whether I want it to be made available to members only, and organizations members, and who's able to join this group and how they're able to access it, or whether it can even be made visible to them. So you've got access to that as you go in and create your group. And again, once you have that group available, then users are able to be added to the group. So you can add individuals to give them access to it, and you can share items with that group as it's created. Going into content now, as I noted, content is the location where a user goes to access all the information that they either own or have published into ArcGIS Online. And there are lots of different types of items that you can publish here. So you can see just based on some of the things that I have in my my content, I've got a web map, I have feature layers, I have a geodatabase that I've pushed up, a shape file, and other items as well. Again, that can include spreadsheets, it can include photos. There are various types of things that you can publish into ArcGIS Online. And when you do that, it's going to be made available as part of a user specific comment. You can go in here on an item by item basis, and you can update sharing. So for example, I have a web map, and right now it's only shared with an owner, which means that only I have access to it as the item owner. But if I were to click on this, this gives me the ability to be able to modify those preferences. So I could make this item shared with the entire organization. So everybody that has access to my MACEM&PS ArcGIS Online platform can then have access to this map, or I can even make it available to everyone public. And that can be useful in certain cases. As an administrator, you have the ability to be to determine whether or not your users can share information with the public. For a school implementation, it's recommended generally that you don't make this option accessible because you probably don't want your students sharing information with the public. But there could be cases where you do want to do that. So that is an option that you can enable or disable as an administrator. I can also enable group sharing here. So I can access all of the groups that are available in my organization, and I can make this item available to one or more of them. So you can see here that this layer just below it, FCC Campus Mapping, has been shared not only with myself as the organizer, but also with these 2 groups, with MACEM&PS and with the HSET program. So here you can also set items up as favorites. And if you have a lot of items, tagging favorites can be a good way to easily get back to those items, and that would make them available here in this tab next to my content. And so this is where I'll quickly just show how you add items to ArcGIS Online. And there's a couple ways to do that. If you have an item that you want to push up to ArcGIS Online, you can go to content here, and you can add a new item. And that gives you the ability to either create a brand new item. So you could create a brand new layer in ArcGIS Online, which wouldn't have any data in it, but you could create a brand new layer that's hosted here. or a new application. You can also upload existing data that you have here, and this is where you would go to do that. So here you can either drag and drop different types of content that you have on your desktop or from a folder in this window here, or you can go and choose an option to either add from your device, from your Google Drive, from your Dropbox, or even from your OneDrive. So if I go to my device and I navigate to a data set here, you'll see that it's going to show pretty much everything that you have in a specific folder. But there are restrictions on what you can and can't upload. Two of the most common things that get uploaded into ArcGIS Online are going to be geodatabases and shapefiles, and those are pretty standard GIS formats for those who use GIS. So one important note is that in order to upload a shapefile or to upload a geodatabase, it has to be in a zip folder. For example, a shapefile, as you can see here for this driveway paved layer, consists of a number of files. So if you were to view this in GIS, you would see that it is just one shapefile, driveway paved. If I'm looking at this in Windows, you can see that that shapefile actually consists of a number of different files. I have an SHP, I have an SBX, I have a PRJ, I've got a DBF, and each of these files, again, makes up one shapefile, and they have different functions. So for example, the DBF is the table view of this data, the PRJ is the projection file. So you need all of these files to be able to have one cohesive shapefile. And to be able to upload this into ArcGIS Online, it needs to be included in one zip file. So you can see I do have a zip file here. I'm going to go ahead and upload that. You can see that when I upload, I have the ability to pick which type of data it is. So here you can kind of get a handle on what types of data you can actually upload. So we've got a shapefile, we've got a geodatabase. Similarly to a shapefile, a geodatabase is actually already packaged up in a folder that will end in GDB. If you look at it in Windows Explorer and you go into that GDB folder, you're going to see dozens of files that have various extensions. If you zip that GDB folder up, you'll be able to publish it here as a geodatabase, which is nice because you can have an entire collection of layers and not just one layer like you would in a shapefile. You can have photos with locations. So these are geotag photos that have location information associated with it. You can upload a deep learning package, map templates. If you have users that are using ArcMap, which is Esri's desktop GIS tool, you can publish data from a map document, which would include information on the layers that are packaged up in that map document, as well as some of the symbology and stylization that's associated with the map. You can publish CAD data, CSV data, which is going to be table information. Again, that has to be a zip file that contains one CSV file per layer. So you can see as you kind of go through this list, it gives you some instruction on how information should be packaged up if it can't be directly uploaded in the native file type. And here you can kind of see some of the other things that are able to be uploaded directly to ArcGIS Online. So when you go to upload your data item, it's going to default the item type based on what it thinks your data is. However, it doesn't always get it right. So you may have to go in and manually specify. In this case, it did identify that I'm uploading a shapefile. And then you have the option to determine how you want to add the shapefile. And this is important because the ability to add a hosted feature layer is a pretty key piece of ArcGIS Online. A hosted feature layer is basically going to take the copy that you're uploading of whatever the data item is, and it's going to create a web hosted service that can be modified in the web environment. So it gives you the ability to be able to edit the data within the web environment, which is really powerful. But one note is that when you publish a hosted feature layer, it does eat up more credit. So there's credit usage associated with publishing data beyond just the data storage itself. So that can be something that you want to be aware of, especially if you have lots of users publishing information and you have lots of users publishing large hosted feature layers. It can be a drain on credits. So that might be something that you want to keep an eye on as you start to expand your user base. You've also got the ability to add your driveway paved zip only, in which case you're just adding the shapefile without publishing. It can be shared by others. So a user would be able to get access to this item but you couldn't add it in a map. You couldn't modify it. So this is more for just data storage and data sharing. As an administrator or as an instructor, you might want to use this option if you're looking to just share information with your class for an exercise where you want to give them a set of shape files that they need to use and have them download that data, republish it as services or otherwise, or you just want to give them access to various types of information that you don't want to publish as editable or viewable GIS data. In this case, I'm going to add the driveway paved. I'm going to create the hosted feature layer and click next. And you can see then I'm going to be prompted to add information on the title. I'll make this driveway paved. You can add it to a specific folder. I'll keep it in my main user folder associated with my account. I'll add some tags. You can see here some tags that I've used recently. So I'll use MACEM&PS and I'll add a new tag for driveway. And I'll add a quick summary. Paved driveways. And from that point, I'll go ahead and hit save, and you'll see it's going to go ahead and start uploading. It's going to do a quick check of the data. You can see now it's publishing that service that's associated with it. And then it's going to take me to my new data item. So you can see here, this is my new driveway paved data item that I've uploaded from my shapefile that I had on my local machine here. You can see it starting to load information. So I've got information on what that layer is, when it was uploaded, who owns it, and so forth. At this point, this is where you can go in and add information about this item. So if this is an item that you wanted to share with others in your organization, you might want to edit your thumbnail and make it a more descriptive picture so that when users view it, they can see what it is. Here you can also modify information on the settings of that item. And on the right-hand side here, you can see we have a number of options of what I want to do with this item next. So I can add this to Map Viewer. If you choose this, it's basically going to create a brand new map like it would if you clicked on the Map tab up here, but it's going to create a map that has this item added to it. You can also open Map Viewer Classic here, as we noted, or Map Viewer Classic with editing control, which will give you the ability to actually modify the data itself. You can open it in the scene viewer, which is going to give you that 3D visualization capability. If you have desktop software running when the data is published, you can also open it directly here in ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro. So this is going to give you the ability to access this actual hosted feature service in your desktop environment, not the actual data that you've published from your machine. And you can also do other things here, like you can export your data to various types of formats, so to a shapefile, to a CSV, a KML, which is Google Earth friendly, an Excel spreadsheet or otherwise. And this is really an important option if you have data that's being modified by others and you have folks that want to export this out for other uses, for an Excel spreadsheet, for using Google Earth or otherwise. And if I go down to my metadata tab, then you can see a general summary of all the information associated with this in standard metadata format. So I'm going to go back to my content here, and I'm just going to quickly update or show a quick web map that I've developed previously. So I'll show my ArcGIS Online Campus Mapping project here. You can see that this is a map that I created a couple of days ago. You can see that these are all the data layers that are associated with my map. And I'm going to go ahead and open this map in Viewer. So this is how you would access a map that you've saved previously, where you've set things up, where you styled data, where you've added certain layers and made things look a certain way. Once you do that and you save it, that can be, again, made available there. And you can see here that if I go down, you can see my layers list. I've got elevation for my buildings. I've got streams for water bodies on campus. I've got fences, ditches, and otherwise. So this is where all my layers are. Here I can reorder them. I can change their visibility. So if I didn't want to show visually my buildings, for example, I can turn them off, and you'll see that my buildings layer won't show when I click on the eyeball icon. And you can add new layers to that list as well. You can add layers here. You can also add it from the add button in the top left. So for example, if I wanted to go add a layer and I wanted to browse my current layers, I could go here. I could browse for that driveway layer that I just published. You'll see here that it actually shows up at the top of my list since it's something that I've accessed most recently. But I could also search for layers, and if I type in driveway, it's going to filter against all the stuff that I have here, and it's going to show me my driveways layer, what we just published. So here, I could add this to my map, and it's going to drop it in, and you can see now that I have this published, I've got access to all these driveway features that I published from my shapefile locally. And here at this point, now that I have the driveways layer added to my map, now that I have it selected here in my layers, I can modify how it looks when it appears and otherwise. So, it came in by default with this blue appearance, but if I went in and changed my layer style, I can go here, I can change the symbol itself, and I can change the fill. I can either go based on this pre-existing palette of colors that are made available. I can actually go and specify a custom color based on either this window here, or I can type in an RGB or an HSV value. I can change the transparency. I can change the outline. So you have a lot of flexibility in terms of how you actually visualize data. If I wanted to show my driveways in yellow, I can do that. I can update my transparency to maybe 35% transparent so that it can be partially seen through. And I can click done, and then that has been applied now. So that's how you would go about adding new data to an ArcGIS Online map that you have. And then from there, if I hit done, I'm back to where I was. And if I go now down to my my table of contents, my legend here, you can see that now I can see what all of the data layers are in my map and how they appear visually. A couple of other commonly used functions within the map view as you're starting to get familiar with how it's set up and how you change these specific parameters for an item. If I were to go to my buildings layer and highlight it and bring up my properties here, as I mentioned, styles are where you're going to change how a data layer looks visually, but you can also change properties in terms of what's shown. So I can apply a filter here as we discussed earlier. I can use various attributes or fields to apply certain types of drawing styles, and I can even apply labels to my maps here. So if I want to enable my labels, I can add a label class. I can change to, for example, show building elevation, which is what I used earlier to display my building heights in 3D. And I can show that. I'll replace it and I'll save. And you can see then I've got an elevation value assigned with my buildings here. I've got my 384.59 building elevation as my building label here. So you've got the ability to be able to label features. Here you can also assign detailed information on pop-ups. So if a user is navigating a map and they're dragging around and they click on a building and they want to see more information about it, they can click on the polygon. And that's going to pull up this pop-up here, and that's going to give them access to all the attribution that's associated with that that item. So you can see here that the address is included, the city, the creation date, all of the information associated with it. And this can be easily modified within the map. So you can show only certain types of attributes here. If you want to limit the number that are displayed, you can change how they appear. You can configure this pop-up to look different visually if you want. So you've got the ability to manage that in this in this area also. So that's a basic introduction to the ArcGIS Online platform. Again, just some basic information on how to navigate the ArcGIS Online landing page, how you get to various items, how you can create a map or upload your own content. So again, this is a very brief crash course in ArcGIS Online, but obviously, as you can tell, there's quite a bit to explore here. And it's a very intuitive platform. So as you get some time to experiment with it and spend some time playing around, you'll pick things up quickly. And I'll also provide some really good learning resources that can help you to get familiarized, not just with the functionality of ArcGIS Online in terms of creating maps and apps and managing items, but also the administration side of it, so that you as an instructor or an ArcGIS Online administrator are comfortable with how you use some of the administrative tools and how you manage some of the administrative responsibilities that come with that role. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm actually going to switch back over to the presentation. And we'll go back and talk a little bit about some of the tips and best practices that might help you to either get up and running with ArcGIS Online as an administrator or an instructor, and also some tips and how to make the most out of ArcGIS Online as you get started. So some of the things we'll cover are just getting started, getting up and running, how to administer accounts, the utilization of single sign-on and how that can be incorporated within ArcGIS Online, credit management, data sharing, and just general data governance as a whole. So first and foremost, in terms of getting your bundle, as I mentioned, there's an existing form on the Esri Education website that you can go to. It only takes a minute or two to fill out. When you submit that request, it goes to Esri, and then an Esri rep will reach out to you directly to start to get things set up on your end. And at that point, they'll provide you with a URL to your new ArcGIS Online site. They'll give you administrator credentials and provide some information that you need to get the ball rolling. One good thing to do before you go through that process is just to check and see if your school already has a license here. If you're not sure, there's a pretty nice little web map that Esri has developed where you can go. You can search either on the map or based on name or keywords, and you can see if potentially your school or your school system already has a bundle in place, in which case you may be able to leverage that rather than having to go through the full setup process. As noted, typically bundles are provided one per school, and they don't administer a bundle for a specific program or an instructor or a class. But there are exceptions to that. But this is a great place to just make that check. If you do have one set up for your school and you find it when you're searching here, it should give you a contact that you can reach out to. So you'll know who within your organization you can ping to try to get on board with the already existing bundle that your school may have. In terms of user management, so administrators, again, they're going to have the ability overall to manage items and groups within the organization. The administrator is going to be the ones who are responsible for setting up user logins and also just the standard user login creation approach. So as new users are added, as you give students their accounts, what default privileges do they get? That's going to be defined by the administrator. Just as you get set up, there are existing standards that are in place, but you can always tweak that. So if you want all of your students to be added as viewers, they can view items and they can add items, but can't do some of the more advanced things, you can set that by default. And that we can give you the ability to be able to add more advanced privileges to individuals as they need them. You could also just provide all users with access to a higher level account, and you could give them creator privileges so that they can do all of those things up front. So again, it really just depends on the number of users that you have within your organization, how students are going to be using the platform, and that's going to kind of drive that approach. You can also invite users to join the organization, and this can be done in bulk. So if you have a big group of users that you want to add to your organization, and you have the list of names and accounts in an email, you can, or in a spreadsheet, you can upload that, and it'll do it in bulk, and that can reduce some of the manual effort that's required to administer. User logins can be pre-established, so you can have new logins created for all new users by default. Or you can give the ability for users to join with their existing Esri logins if they might have them from other work, or they can be prompted to create their own. Administrators can also disable or delete users, which is important as maybe students move beyond your program. You can disable them, or you can delete those users, which will free up accounts for others. And it will also help you to be able to more effectively manage and maintain content that may have been tied to the folks that are no longer working within your class environment. You can manage user passwords here as well. So if you need to reset passwords, if you need to assign default passwords for your students, the administrator is going to have the ability to do that. And also they can specify groups that all users are automatically added to. So if you have a couple of groups that span your entire organization, you can give all new users access to those groups by default, so that you don't have to manually go in and add those users to these broader groups one by one. So some of these general best practices can just help to reduce the amount of manual effort that you have to do as an administrator. And in that same vein, in terms of minimizing the amount of manual effort, one of the things that can really be a burden on administrators is just user account management, password management, and so forth. So single sign-on can actually be used with ArcGIS Online to help connect a school district's or a teacher login database, like the internet provider, with the ArcGIS Online organization that you set up. And that can allow for two very important things. Students and teachers can use their existing usernames and passwords that they would use to access other school resources to access ArcGIS Online. It lets that information get shared kind of behind the scenes. So students and teachers don't have to enter their credentials every time they want to access ArcGIS Online. One less set of usernames and passwords for everybody to manage. And that can be a big time saver. You can also use this to automatically create new accounts. So for those that don't already have an account in your organization, if you set up SSO, nobody should have to create new ArcGIS Online users, because SSO is going to create them automatically. So again, this can be one way to streamline the process, make access easier for students and teachers alike. And as an administrator, it can minimize the amount of time that you have to spend administering user accounts and passwords. When single sign-ons are turned on, students and teachers just have to have that one-click access through your regular sign-in. So if you're using G Suite, you would access through your drop-down dashboard. The first time that a student or a teacher clicks on the icon for ArcGIS Online, it's going to just initiate that account creation. They're going to get logged in with their school credentials, and that's going to be it. So again, it's going to make that process significantly easier. It's a really important thing in terms of being able to let users focus on instruction. So again, instructors don't have to spend time worrying about account management and managing passwords. It also can help provide access to others within the school district or the organization. So users that might want to access GIS outside of the classroom, they can get that access much more easily with the single sign-on setup. And teachers don't have to then assume the liabilities of making IT or security types of decisions when ensuring student privacy. And this helps to protect everybody. This can be used not just with Google Classroom or with G Suite, but also with Microsoft Active Directory, Okta, and many other service providers. In terms of actually getting this implemented, this can be requested at no cost from the ArcGIS school software page within Esri. So when you have set up your school organization, the next step is just to create an account for the Esri technician to use. The account's going to have administrator privileges, and they'll send an email to your organization to get things set up. So it's a pretty straightforward process. Esri will support you, but it's always a great idea to engage your information technology staff and your administration early on, just because it can take some time to get the proper approvals to get this implemented, because again, it is going to interface with your other security systems. Typically, the SSO connection itself doesn't take very long to set up, but access to district personnel or IT support or network infrastructure can definitely impact how long it takes to implement. But generally speaking, it's pretty smooth, and the benefits are significant. We touched briefly on user roles. User roles can be really powerful in terms of providing administrators with the ability to give groups of users specific types of access and permissions to ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Online resources. So standard roles that we discussed earlier can be assigned. You can also create custom roles that better fit the common use patterns of your users. So from a standard user perspective, standard users can, they can use and share maps and apps, they can create items, they can join and create groups, and they can edit features. Publishers can do all of those things, plus they can run analyses and publish hosted services. Those analyses and published hosted services are great tools, but they also are large credit consumers. So you may not want to provide everybody with publisher access, because at that point you risk having lots of users running some of those things that can impact credits. Not as big of a deal in the school environment, because generally you don't run into issues with credit availability, but it is a consideration. And then administrators, in addition to being able to do all of that, they have the ability to manage the organization and all the users and manage the roles as noted. The sharing of items, it's important to understand the sharing options and the basic principles of sharing. When we were doing the demo, I showed that you can go on an item by item level, and you can assign how that item is shared. So when you create an item, you as the owner of that item are responsible for updating sharing. An administrator can go in and they can update the sharing for any items anybody shares, but otherwise, it's going to be limited to those who are a data owner or an item owner. So you can go there, you can update sharing to make it visible to only the owner, to the organization as a whole, to everybody, including the public, or you can set it up to be specific to individual groups or collections of groups. There's also the option to use deletion protection for shared items, which is sometimes good, because it is possible for an item to be inadvertently deleted by somebody. So if you use deletion protection for an item that you own, you can avoid any of the hassle associated with trying to recover a backup or deal with something that was accidentally deleted by somebody else who had access. And just one general best practice is to only provide access to editable items to those who need it. Public data collection is one of those potential use cases. In terms of item management and maintenance, as an administrator, the items in your organization are going to change over time. So just a couple of good best practices in terms of item management and maintenance, because these things can accumulate quickly as you get more and more users. As GIS starts to permeate your organization and more people have access to it, you're going to see that sometimes it can become a dumping ground, or sometimes you can get large volumes of legacy data and things that are no longer in use. They can clutter your ArcGIS Online, or can also serve to eat up credits, especially if you have them as hosted feature services. So, first, audit your content regularly, review old or unused items, and check for large hosted layers or other things that could potentially be high credit users. Old and unused items, they're going to consume storage space, and that can clutter search results also. So it's good to just it's good to just review those periodically. One of the best ways to take a look at these are to go into your items and just sort them. Sort them by creation date, sort them by last viewed date, and you might be able to get away with removing a lot of those items that haven't been created or that haven't been used in quite some time, especially those that may belong to folks that are no longer within your ArcGIS Online environment. That can be accessed in the content page, and again, you can sort or filter based on a number of different criteria. ArcGIS Online, again, it's going to charge storage credits based on how much data you have stored, and so it's important to monitor that. And you can also access a summary of how items are impacting your credit usage from the credits tab that's available under your organization page as an administrator. One other thing to note is that the difference between deprecation and deletion. So deprecation can be used in cases where maybe you have legacy items that you're not using, but that you want to keep around because you expect that they might be used again. And on the other hand, deletion is going to completely remove it. So if you have things that you're not sure that you want to remove, and you just want to flag them and just kind of keep them on the side so that they don't show up in certain searches or aren't being modified, you can deprecate them. On the flip side of that, if you delete them, it's going to clear those items out of ArcGIS Online. It's not going to count against your credit usage, but they're going to be gone, and there's no real way to recover those unless you have them backed up elsewhere. And groups are also a great way to help manage content. So if you you look through your groups and you can clearly identify which items are assigned to certain groups, once those groups are no longer needed, you can remove those groups and the items that are associated with them, and that can be a good way to manage some of your content in bulk. Some general best practices just for ArcGIS Online governance. As you're getting up and running and you have a small user base, this can be pretty straightforward. But as you start to get more users, if you get more instructors that want to have access for their classes, if you're trying to use ArcGIS Online beyond just GIS courses, it's good to identify champions in the organization and your support personnel. I mentioned getting engaged with IT, especially as you try to do things like implement SSO. It's good to have the support of information technology staff. And if you have other instructors that are really interested and that are going to help to advocate for this within the organization or that want to use it, it's good to have a committee or a working group. A group that gets together on a regular basis, talks about how this is being used. And I think when you do that, you'll identify additional opportunities where it can benefit others within your school. And then just setting up standard practices for users is also really important. So when you do your introduction to ArcGIS Online for students, make them aware of certain best practices, things like I noted, not publishing feature services when you don't need them, um, populating relevant item information for items that they create, descriptions and tags and thumbnails that are going to help people find their information if they need access to it. And also it's going to help you better manage the content across the organization. So again, those are just good things to implement as you get up and running with ArcGIS Online. And just some other notes in terms of monitoring activity and reporting. There are some great tools that are available within the administrator's tool set here that you can use to help monitor system usage, storage usage, and see how much space you're using up across your organization. Is also credit utilization. You can monitor the number of members that you have, the number of groups, the number of items, your most active users, most viewed items, who are the individuals in the groups that have the most items. And this is all available on a pretty slick dashboard that's available on the organization's status page. And then from there, you can drill down into some more specific reports, and those reports are going to help illustrate how your users are creating content, how they're sharing content, and how different users are contributing to your organization. In terms of some of the other tools that are at your disposal, credit usage. Each organization is going to use credits a little bit differently. Again, use credit budgeting if you can. You can also set up various types of notifications that can give you a heads up if you've got people that are using maybe an unexpected number of credits, or you have users that are incurring more credit usage costs than you had budgeted for. You can get those on somewhat of an automated basis, so it kind of helps to reduce that level of a manual effort involved in administering your organization. And finally, I wanted to just end today's session with some great online resources that are available for instructors that want to get up and running and want to do more of a deep dive on some of the functionality of ArcGIS Online and want to get a little more comfortable as they start to implement this. The two Esri Academy learning plans that I have bold here, one is ArcGIS Online Fundamentals, and one is the management of an ArcGIS Online organization. These are great places to get started. These are prepackaged collections of existing Esri courses. They range from about a half hour up to a couple of hours, but they're going to give you a great foundation in terms of just getting started with ArcGIS Online itself, creating maps, managing content, the general basics there, as well as the actual management and administration of the organization that's going to be important to you. There are some other resources that are linked here in terms of the Learn ArcGIS gallery, which is going to be a great way to provide some ideas for how you might be able to use the GIS technology in the classroom for various types of exercises and activities. There is a collection of great education webinars here under the GIS and K-12 education webinars. And there's a great wiki page that exists specific to ArcGIS Online administration. In terms of that first bundle that I mentioned, the Esri Academy Learning Plan for ArcGIS Online Fundamentals, here you can see that it's a collection of 4 courses. So you get the ArcGIS Online Essential Workflows, ArcGIS Online Basics, Smart Mapping in ArcGIS Online, and the creation and sharing of GIS content using ArcGIS Online. So again, these range from 45 minutes to full day sessions. Some of these are going to be automatically included when you get your ArcGIS for Schools bundle. You'll have the option to get access to the learning platform, which I very much recommend. Some of these might require an additional fee that you would have to you'd have to cover for some of the more in-depth day-long type sessions, but the rest of these should be readily available to you as an instructor and are going to be a great way to get started on the fundamentals. And then this is the administration side. You can see this is a longer list of courses, but it's going to give you a good foundation in how to configure and administer your organization, how to perform basic administrative tasks, how to manage your members, how to manage content. There's actually a course for configuring enterprise logins, which is the SSO item that was covered earlier. And there's an hour-long course just to cover that and how you get it set up and how to manage it. There's an implementation guide as well as a security overview, and those are just standalone documents that you have that you can use as resources. So I would definitely suggest exploring those two learning plans as a great place to get started. And then finally, I'll make myself available as much as possible as a resource to instructors. And for those of you who have not worked with me in the past, my contact information is listed here. And so I can be reached by my Frederick Community College email or by cell phone. And I'm always happy to work alongside instructors as partners to help you get up and running, whether it's in terms of training, whether it's helping to develop classroom exercises, to help deliver various exercises with students. I'm available as a resource as you need me. And so my contact information can be found here. And so with that, we're going to wrap up this workshop. I hope this was helpful information to you as a GIS instructor or somebody who's looking to incorporate GIS and geospatial technology in the classroom. And look forward to hearing from you and working alongside you in the future.